Welcome to Morning Infusion with Dr. V, where we are intentional about connecting you with leaders that have overcome so that you know that the possibilities are endless. It's Dr. V here, where our coaching program teaches you to work from your computers anywhere around the world, making money and owning your own time. So today, our featured guest is Dr. Janice Linton. So Dr. Linton is a doctorally prepared, I should know that, right? Prepared adult nurse practitioner and assistant professor with over 20 years of nursing experience. She has she has a subspecialty certification as an advanced certified hospice and palliative care nurse and practice as a nurse practitioner for an inpatient consultative palliative care team. She has worked in several direct care nursing jobs, providing care to general surgical patients and cardiovascular intensive care patients. As a subject matter expert, she has lobbied in Washington, D.C. for the Palliative Care and Hospice Education and Training Act. Her scholarly work includes publications in a peer-reviewed journal, national and international speaker in palliative care. Dr. Linton's passion is people development, and she embraces that passion as a certified career coach, entrepreneur, co-founder, and president of Advanced Planning Learning Institute. So welcome, Dr. Linton. How are you?
I am well. Thank you, Dr. V, for having me. This is great.
Yes. So now, I'm gonna start this off because you're Jamaican nurse. So you came here at an early age from Jamaica. Tell us about the rationale behind the decision to come to America.
So my formative years were spent in Jamaica. So as I was sharing with you, one of my students said to me a couple days ago that she's a hardcore Jamaican, and I realized how much that is, who we are. But I came here for academic pursuits. My dad knew of nurses who did well here, and he believes in my abilities, and he just believes that you just need to be put in that space of opportunity. And so academic pursuits, and here I am several years later.
I love it. One of the things that we do know is that you surround yourself with the people who are amazing, right? And you surround yourself with people who are on that upward trajectory. And if you couldn't get it where you are, what is his name, Darren Hardy, he talks about the fact that he moved, right? He moved to this certain area for that same reason, right? Because he felt like, he wanted to be where they were. He wanted to advance his career. So he moved in to that space. And one of the things that technology has given us the ability to do is to be able to be in those spaces without actually moving where our actual location, right? Which
Correct.
Way back when we didn't have technology like we do now, right?
No. Accessibility. Technology has opened up that, path for accessibility without geography.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
That's exactly right. So now you and your father were here while your mother was back in Jamaica at the time. What did you live and what did you think about your living arrangements?
So Dad and I lived in less than ideal situations for a portion of my LPN journey because I started my nursing journey as an LPN. And so we lived in extended stay hotels, which at the time would, could have brought some embarrassment, some despair, but it didn't because one, God was in control. Two, I was with my dad. Despite adversity, you're with family, with my dad, and there's this best intention. And three, I had an aim in mind and a goal in view. And so the living arrangement, I knew that was temporary.
I love it. I love it. And one of the things that I like every time I hear you speak, I'm like, yeah, this lady right here, oh, we gonna be friends forever. I can imagine that because you're just like it doesn't matter. The small things don't matter, right? Where I'm living right now does not matter about where I'm going, right?
Nope.
It's that upward trajectory. It's saying that, okay, this is where I am now. Okay, let me make moves in order to get me to where I need to be.
Right. Yep.
Now you said
I talk about this all the time. Have a goal, have a plan, and execute. So I am goal, plan, execute. Goal, plan, execute.
and as long as you don't stop. The people who don't win are the people who stop. And I say this all the time, that the race is not given to the swift nor to the strong, but to those who endure to the end. Because I started out my journey as well as an LPN. But when I started out my journey as an LPN, I used to think that I was just not smart. I was like, well, I'm just not smart, because I couldn't gain the concepts very early on. But see, the problem was that I didn't know what type of learner I was. So,
Mm-hmm.
you have the visual, the auditory, and then you have the kinesthetic learner, right? I was a kinesthetic learner. Okay, as long as I did, I got it. So I spent 10 years as an LPN, right? And once I spent those 10 years as an LPN, and then I went back to school to get my RN degree. And when I went back to school to get my RN degree, I spent 14 years as an RN, and then went back and get my BSN, my master's, and my DNP. But it was because of the exposure. It was because of the fact that I was able to understand that just because I started here, that does not mean that I will finish here. So
Yep. So I will just throw something in here about the word consistency. People think they're not consistent. We're all consistent. We're either consistently growing or consistently stagnating. You just decide which side of that compass you plan to be on. We're all consistent beings, right? So you
that's
decided to consistently grow.
I love it. I love it. And the fact that, you know, the consistency, the hard is it's gonna be hard on either side of it, right?
Hmm.
Choose which hard you want. Okay.
Exactly.
I want the hard where I have a little bit more control, although I don't have any control at all, because God has control, right? But you just decide which side of the heart that you want. And I'm deciding that I want it to be on the good side of that heart. And you said that
Exactly.
excellence was accepted, but not often celebrated. Tell me some of the instances where this narrative rang true in your own life.
Okay, so in my experience from both parents, they expect excellence. I think that is true of most or all Jamaican parents. So we have, besides our anthem, we have the Jamaican national song, and it says, Jamaica, land of beauty, we promise faithfully to serve thee with our talents and bring our gifts to thee. Jamaica, we will always, in honor of thy name, work steadfastly and wisely and never bring thee shame. And so we're singing that from 5 years old, and so my parents, we are, they're of that philosophy. That's how they raised me. So my dad would come to graduations. He came to my undergrad, and I graduated magna cum laude. And you would think that would be like this celebratory thing. Like, he's just like, anyone can have a BSN. I was like, oh, thanks, Dad. Let me know the anyone. Let me know the many anyones that you know. Then he comes to my graduate school, and he's getting close to me. I'm thinking this is that, endearment, daddy coming up to give me a congratulatory hug. He whispers in my ear, I want to come back to more. I was like, what is happening here? Okay. So that excellence is expected. It is expected, but that's celebratory. Then for my DM, before I got my DMP, when I was getting married, he loved the choice I made. Wedding card said, you've done well. I am very happy for you, but the mission is not complete. I was like, what? Okay, then. So he finally they said, okay, yes, because this is what I expect for you. And, as much as I've lived here, I'm realizing that I'm parenting my boys the same. But 2020 is teaching me to rethink, or has taught me to rethink how I parent, celebrate people, celebrate their accomplishments. There's nothing wrong with that. You still want to encourage growth and excellence, but there's nothing wrong with because if you don't celebrate people, who will?
But I like your perspective on that. I like the way that you took that, because a lot of people would take that and they would be like, well, nothing was ever good enough for him, right? But you you just took that as, okay, I just need to go up another level.
Yes, yes, yep, yep,
It's
yep,
okay, right? I
yep.
mean, just keep it moving, right? I think not that I think, I know that your perspective can be either your prison or your passport. And so you can either take it and you can go forward, or you can have it as your prison. And, having it as your prison is never, ever good. So, now you said that people can actually swim. Someone needs to just push them in the water. Now tell me what you mean by this, and tell me about a time when you were actually pushed in the water.
So I don't think we realize that potential is limitless, right? Potential is limitless, and often it's an observer that raises your awareness of that untapped potential. So I just want to take care of my two patients and go home nurse when I was in the CBICU. got there, I still felt I was new. And the running joke was I was early and they didn't have anybody on list for charge. Oh, Janice will be charged. Janice, and I was just like, no, I can't do this. Like there's senior nurses in here. Oh no, you can do this. Fast forward, the unit expands to a 22 bed. There's another opportunity for another A&M, and even the senior nurses came to me and they're like, you should apply for this. But that's because they saw me in that leadership role and leadership potential and I'm like, I can't do this. And it was, yes, you're going to apply for this. And I will tell you, it created that proximity to other leaders that totally raised my awareness. Choice, function of awareness. I was choosing differently. I was seeing differently. And it also, excuse me, broadened that sphere of influence, because John Maxwell says what? Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And yeah, and that even palliative care, I was pushed into palliative care. Palliative care found me, and that field, which we'll talk about sometime later, that field has really, really opened opportunities for me. I wouldn't have chosen that.
I love it. I love it. So you said choice are a function of awareness.
Yeah.
So explain that to the audience.
So you cannot choose what you're not aware of, right? So there are opportunities there, and you'll hear. So somebody will watch our show today, and they'll be like, "Oh my goodness, I want to be Dr. V." But you don't know how Dr. V became Dr. V, or Dr. Linton became Dr. Linton. So the choices are not there for you. You don't even know what exists, how they exist. And so when someone comes to present this level, raises your awareness, oh, you can be Dr. V. This is how it was done. Now you can choose differently. Dave Ramsey, I was talking to my husband last night about if we were in another setting, would we know of financial peace, the debt snowballed? Now we make different financial decisions because we are aware of this path, right?
I love it because when I first was introduced to Dave Ramsey, one of the things that I wanted to do was I wanted to just raise my credit score. Okay. But see, Dave Ramsey just really exposed the idea of not even needing a credit score, having enough cash flow that you don't even need the credit score, that you can walk into the dealership with cash on hand. And so, again, it was, I'm raising my level of awareness so that I can make different choices to get me to that level. So yes, I love that. I love that. So now when we talked, you referenced a book about the 4 people that you will meet: teacher, mentor, coach, and sponsor. What is the book and what is the importance of each of these roles in your life?
So Dr. John Maxwell has several books. I recommend read one, read any one, you will, life changing. And so that book that I referenced was The Leader's Greatest Return. I'm still trying to figure out which John Maxwell book is my favorite. Everyone I read becomes the next favorite. And so, he talks about the people that you need in your life: teacher, mentor, coach, and a sponsor. A teacher imparts knowledge, and there's value in formal knowledge. You and I are here as Dr. B. Pierce and Dr. Janice because of formal knowledge. But if you think about what happens after that formal knowledge and you leave the formal knowledge prepares you to be excellent clinicians, right? You're at the bedside, you're providing evidence-based care. But beyond that, where's your thought process, right? Who raises that awareness? Who will show you? So that next person is the mentor who guides, shares their expertise, the how I did it journey, so that you can see that you can emulate, right? Mm-hmm. Then you have the coach to raise your level of awareness so you can match your potential with your performance. Because again, potential, limitless. And then that sponsor. He talks about John Wooden, which was the coach of UCLA, as his sponsor. The people who invited him to the table. John, come and sit with me. If you listen to many of these successful people, look at the degrees of separation from the next successful person, right? So that person invites you and promotes you in that space of opportunity. But what I will tell anyone, be ready for when don't just come sitting there like, okay, feed me, but you don't come prepared. Have a goal, have a plan, and a timeline to execute.
I love it. I love it. I love it. But you know what? It is so true when you talk about that sponsor because I was listening to Tony Robbins this morning because, I wake up early in the morning and I exercise. And one of the things that I do is I listen to a lot of YouTube. And I was listening to Tony Robbins and he was talking about Jim Rohn. And he was talking about the fact that he was influenced by Jim Rohn. And John Maxwell, of course, is, being a John Maxwell certified coach and speaker, one of the things that I do too is listen to his books. And one of the books that I really, really like, of course, the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership really kind of changed my life. But Developing the Leader Within, and I'm probably saying the name of it wrong, but it's his 2.0 version. He said, because now he's a better leader now than he was 20 years ago, right? And so, and it's just so true. So now you are an international speaker on end of life. What is the difference between palliative and hospice care?
So to demystify what palliative care is not, I do all my presentations on palliative care, with the definition, the terminology, and then align patient's illness trajectory. And if it's end of life, then we discuss how you have those conversations. I try not to start with end of life because, of course, it deters people. Oh, we're talking about death and dying. So palliative care is a medical specialty focused on patients with any chronic illness at any age and any stage, where the goal is symptom management and skill communication about that disease, because too often patients have a chronic progressive disease and they're taking whatever medication regimen without an understanding that this is not curative. This is really a palliative modality, but we're trying to stave off that exacerbation of whether it's the shortness of breath or the nausea. And then it is also talking about the trajectory of this illness. This is what happens when you have exacerbation, and when you rally, this is how your functional status could be impacted. We also talk about treatment options, and are those treatment options goal congruent? So somebody with a liver cancer, let's say, that has biliary obstruction, who they've discussed stents. Sometimes medical care can be very algorithmic. So we do this, then this, then this. There's a patient at the end of all of this that we do, whatever the intervention is. And how is that aligning with their goal to go to their daughter's wedding in 2 weeks? And does the patient understand that this is another palliative intervention which may or may not align with the goal? And so that an informed patient is an empowered patient. And so we want to empower the patient. So palliative care, any age, any stage, discussing your illness, managing your symptoms, your symptom burden from a UTI. It's called dysuria. Often we give the patient antibiotic or Bactrim, but never give them pyridium for the dysuria. So you see what I'm saying? You have to treat the whole patient.
Right.
Hospice is a philosophy of care. Some people think it's a location. It's not. So you will hear people say, I'm going to put so-and-so in hospice. Hospice was designed to be in the home, actually, because most patients want to die at home. So it's a philosophy of care where the predicted prognosis, if the disease runs its natural course, is 6 months or less. And the goal is focused on comfort and quality for the patient to live their best days every day until death comes. Hospice is prognosis driven. Palliative care is needs based. What is the need of the patient, no matter what the diagnosis is?
I love it. I love it. So now, why do you think that people can be so obstinate to end of life discussions or issues?
So it's funny, I can't remember where I heard this. It could be on Super Soul Sunday, that life is a terminal condition. And though we all cerebrally know that life is a terminal condition,
none of us get out alive.
No, we're not. No. And even as a believer, as a Christian, the only way to heaven is to die. But no, that there's this finality. You want to be here. And so what I see with my patient encounters is this abandonment of faith. It's a huge thing why we don't want to discuss end of life, because God is, omnipotent, omniscient, and so no, if I give up is what they're thinking, then I'm giving up on the possibilities of God. So that's one of the things that I hear. The other thing is abandonment of hope. Hope, unfortunately, is not a strategy. So, I will support hope when I sit and talk with patients, but I also have to support strategies that align with the medical possibilities and the pathophysiology just of your body, And then there is abandonment of their loved one. If I talk about end of life, my husband is going to think I'm giving up. My wife is going to think I'm giving up, and I don't want to fight. And then there's also people are misinformed. And when you think about the Black population, because of years of sustained structural racism, there is this lack of trust in and they probably see it as more maleficence. You're doing more harm instead of giving me more treatment that can be more harmful. You're now withholding this thing from me, and so no, I don't want. And then the healthcare provider, we feel a sense of abandonment too, because we went into medicine to help and to support cure, right? What will support some of these difficult decisions is advanced care planning conversations before a medical crisis happens. And we should shift that default conversation about what you do not want and shift it to, in the event of a crisis, what would you want?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I was just and I was thankful that I was, allowed to do this. It was a patient that I had that, she was dying essentially. And her she had made the decision on her own, and I think that this is something that we all have to discuss. She had made the decision that she wanted to be a DNR, and her son came in and her son was like, I want to do everything right. And he ended up changing his mind based on our conversation. And one of the things that really helped me to have those conversations is that, because I think that sometimes the patient's family members just have to be just told, okay, it's okay to not do, okay, it's okay to not continue on with this treatment, because a lot of times it's harming the patient more than it is helping the patient. You want quality of life, not quantity of life, right?
Yeah.
And so once he heard what I said, he like literally it changed his life and it changed his mind, and he was okay. And so I have since then been very, very intense. So thank you for that explanation between palliative care and hospice, because I think sometimes we get it wrong, where we don't really understand the real difference between the two. So now,
Always here to educate. Anyone, always here to educate, because it provides such clarity for the families that are left behind when they understand illness trajectory. Because for that son, it was do everything. But I always ask them, what does everything look like to you? What would everything look like? When they talk about hope, what would hope look like? What does hope look like for you? And then our job as medical providers is to explain medical interventions to them. This medical intervention will most patients with this condition that receive this medical intervention will look like this.
and I think that now that I think, I know that your explanation of how the lack of trust in the African American community has really, really changed the way that that is done, and understanding that we have to be very clear that that it's not just, I know that there's some instances where there's instances where people are not acting in your best interest, right?
Correct.
But for the most part, in understanding what on your own, like you said, being educated and having that awareness and making those choices based on how that awareness is huge. So I think that that is huge. Now, you started your own company. What was the primary reasoning for you starting the company?
So I'm a needs assessment. We're DNPs. We needs assessment. So yes, so I would go to clinicals when I was in the role as clinical faculty and ask some of the students, especially or students of color. So what is your goal for this semester? And they would look at me like, oh, that's a thing. Like, what? Yes. What are you expecting from the precept, and what are you bringing to the encounter? And crickets. They're like, oh, I should have a goal. And so I had some concerns about intentionality and awareness once we leave that curated world of the bedside. Like, there is no intentionality or plan to advance your professionally and your life. And so I created Advanced Planning Learning Institute. My son walked in the other day and looked at the acronym and he's like, oh, that's apply for short. He's like, you should use apply. And I'm like, yes, because we discuss applying a plan and a strategy for success. And so I wanted to create, I'm a planner, my archetype, planner. So I wanted to create a space where nurses, aspiring professionals can come and invest in high performance coaching for that career clarity and accountability. Again, to match that potential and performance.
I love it. I love it. Now, what has been the challenges associated with your entrepreneurial journey?
So planner that I am, I'm a punch a clock nurse. I will be there at 6:55, and you get the best out of me during. So this entrepreneurial journey and this push is really my husband. During our dating years, first date, we're taking long drive. He puts in Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I was just like, oh, this is gonna be interesting. So I was just talking to him last night about him. How did you know that I would? He's like, because you were so brilliant, and he just believes in these gifts. And he's like, you can add value to more people than just being at the bedside. So it's to remove the story I'm telling myself that I'm a punch a clock person, and it's also to utilize the platforms. I feel like a dinosaur because I just joined social media. Some of the things, yes, 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 like just like a week ago.
Tell my story. Can I tell our story?
Yeah, and so it's the story I'm telling myself about the unintended consequences of social media. Instead of seeing it that way, just start looking at it at how does it serve me as the platform to add value to aspiring professionals. I share the Wayne Dyer quote: when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And so that is my challenge, changing the way I look at things so the things that I look at will change.
And and it really is. And like when I first met you, like you inboxed me on because we were on the same platform, we were both speaking internationally, and she inboxed me and I was like, okay, well, I want you on my show. And then I start talking to you and I'm like your husband. You are brilliant.
Oh,
so
thank you.
and so last week, we were talking and I was like, look, by the end of this week or by the end of this day, I need for you to make a Facebook profile. Okay. Can you do that for me? And she was like, okay. And so she inboxed me. I've got my Facebook profile.
Yes, yes, yes,
So,
yes.
and it makes a difference because you want to reach more people
Yep.
and your brilliance is, it's just everyone needs it. Okay. And I can't wait to see where this journey will go once they are exposed to you because you're just limited to your little small space, but it's going to be amazing. So,
Yeah.
who is someone that has impacted you in your nursing career and why were they so impactful?
So I will name two people. So the former CNO for the hospital I practice full time. Um, she brought me into that space of opportunity, but again, it was that lack of awareness. Didn't recognize that this was a sponsor. And I'm very, as much as you see me here, I'm more reserved than you than you would think. I sing on stage as a kid. I still sing now. I sang to my husband at our wedding, but I am reserved. And she identified that, and she just got a kick out of it. So she would invite me to leadership conferences. She would sit with me at those tables, participate in the activities with me. Do you hear that John Maxwell definition of a sponsor? I was just not aware enough to recognize it. But what I also, now in retrospect, it's how she normalized my professional development. So I would think, oh my goodness, it costs this much to go to a conference. And she would say, is this going to grow you professionally? You can go.
That's right.
Yep. And then my friend, who is still this is my dearest friend. We've been pregnant together. She believes in my potential. And when there's a promotion at the hospital, she's the first to say, you should apply for that. I'm like, no, I don't want, I just want to take care of the patient. So I remember that transition from the direct care RN to the A&M. She called me and she's like, apply for that position. She wasn't even working there. I'm like, how do you know that is, how do you know? So she's like, apply. And she gave me this little trinket, and on it said, don't be afraid to try. Remember, experts built the Titanic and amateurs built the Ark. And every time I'm worried about trying something, I look at that.
I love it. I love it. I didn't even think about that.
Yep. Yep.
Experts built the Titanic, which like an amateur
Yep.
built art, which is
Yep.
not okay.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
where can the audience find you?
So the audience can find me at aplillc.com, at jlinton at aplillc.com, and I'm on Facebook at AP Learning LLC, and you can also find me on LinkedIn because Advanced Planning Learning Institute again, is that space where aspiring nursing professionals invest in one-on-one high performance coaching for career clarity and accountability so they can match performance with potential.
I love it. It's been amazing. We had some we had some voice or audio issues when we first came on because we normally come on for about 10 minutes prior to. And so we were having these audio issues. And that's the reason why I'm not wearing my headphones right now. And I said, I started praying. I was like, Lord, this is going to be an amazing conversation. And I need for this to go forth to the audience. And so you're amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for showing up this morning. I knew that you would be early. Okay. That's what
That's part of the Jamaican Nurse, man. You gotta listen. Yeah, you gotta get there.
So this is Dr. V here, of course, where our coaching program teaches you to work from your computer around the world, making money and owning your own time. We have a 4-day business challenge on June 8th. It's free, and we will be teaching business mindset, strategies to attract your ideal client, speaking as another stream of income, and the power of social media. And you can go to vpnursing.com to sign up. You guys have a phenomenal rest of your day.